What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and in today's video we're going to go ahead and talk about the EX Volume 2 update as far as the events are concerned, because there are a lot of events that came along with this update. I wasn't able to talk about them in yesterday's video, which if you guys didn't see it, yes, I did work on a rare holiday, so if you guys want to check that out, we talked about the EX Volume 2 banners in that video. So if you're curious what my first impressions were with the EX on hell, the new cards, etc., link will be in the description. But I wanted to talk about the events in today's video because, again, we didn't get a chance to talk about them yesterday, but also because, honestly, there's a bit of a mixed bag at hand here, and I want to talk about a few things that are going on with this update that I don't necessarily care for too much. A lot of it's going to have to do with some of the rewards, so we're going to talk about all of that in today's video. But before we go ahead and get into all of that and more, make sure if you guys haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe. And without further ado, you guys know what time it is. Cue that intro. Alright, you guys, in today's video we're going to go ahead and talk about the events that were part of the EX Volume 2 update because we weren't able to talk about those in yesterday's video. If you guys are curious about my thoughts on the EX Volume 2 banners, you can check out yesterday's video, link will be in the description. But in today's video, I want to go ahead and focus on the events, so let's go ahead and get into it. So as you guys can see, these are going to be the various events that came along with the EX Volume 2 update. First thing we're going to take a look at here is going to be the Rush Dungeon. So of course, as with any Rush Dungeon, this thing here is pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward. You're going to have the characters and the fighters that you need in order to get the bonus drops for your items here. And then beyond that, the biggest thing to talk about when it comes to any Rush Dungeon is of course going to be the exchange shop. So this time around, the exchange shop is actually going to have a ton of value. I think that this is one of the best parts of the events for this update in general. If you take a look here, you're going to notice a ton of these different items that you would probably want to try and pick up every day. In fact, I would argue that between the Moon and the Star Plus imprint cores, as well as these dispatch speed up tickets, these hammers, and some of these capsules here, you're probably going to be picking up a fair bit from this. In general, I think as far as the items are concerned, there's a ton of value here, and I would honestly tell you guys to make sure that you try to farm this thing whenever the final stage opens up as much as you can. And as, of course, I say with any of these, it comes down to how much you can budget as far as your AP. Now, obviously, we also are going to have a rush set this time around. We've talked about how amazing the card art is for the moderate versus frustrated set already, so I'm not going to gush over it again, but let's take a look at the effect. So we are going to have an increase to attack for this set, which is always welcome. But then if we take a look at the effects here, you're going to see that Operation Kitty Fighters poison, burn, and shock damage is increased by 75%, and it's also going to increase your attack by 22% for 7 seconds when an Operation Kitty Fighter lands an active skill on a cooldown of 10 seconds. So in general, we've seen these types of card sets before. We all know just how powerful these things can be. In general, the characters that this is going to come to mind for, in particular, are going to be the current banner characters. And in general, I would say that just like the sets we've seen very much so like this in the past, you're going to at least want to get one copy of this set. So you're probably going to want to budget your AP accordingly for this Rush Exchange shop, because in general, between the items and the card set, all of this stuff has value. So definitely make sure once the final stage of this Rush Dungeon opens up that you guys are playing this and you're trying to grind this stuff out. In particular, just make sure that you guys try to at least get one set of this card set, if for anything, just for the art, because I mean, look at it. But in general, jokes aside, card set is fantastic. I do like that they continue to do these free sets and they continue to be very strong sets in general. But that is going to be the Rush Dungeon. Very good stuff. Not much else to talk about there. Just wait for this thing to open up later tonight and get your grind on. So, beyond that, let's go ahead and talk about the next part of the update, which is going to be the Babyface Tower. And I have my complaints. So, as you guys can see, I spent a little bit of time yesterday playing this. The biggest thing about this that I do like is the fact that they did go ahead and include a third character here that wasn't on the current banner. So of course, Leona 12 is going to be a character that you can take in here, which is really nice because she's going to be a unified banner fest that we have had for a very long time. She was also buffed with this update. So in general, if you don't want to have to go in on the current banner, you don't technically have to as long as you have her. And being that she is a very, very strong option, you should be able to get through this thing without much of a problem as long as you can invest in her accordingly to get the proper amount of CP needed to clear the final stage, which this thing goes all the way up to 77k. So that part is really nice. What isn't really nice about this is the rewards. So a couple of different things here, guys. Obviously, we got Kusanagi here chilling on level 29. There is a lot of data mines in regards to him I can talk about in a separate video later on down the line, but just know that there is a very good chance and a very high likelihood based on what's in the data that we might end up seeing Kusanagi as a playable character down the road, so keep that in mind for those of you who are fans. But as far as what I don't like about this, it's going to be the rewards, right? So I'm old enough to remember back when we had good rewards on towers. It seems like it was just yesterday, right? But when it comes to these, jokes aside, honestly, you guys, I don't even feel like playing this thing. Now, obviously, you're going to want to for some of these things because not all the rewards are bad. The rewards in general aren't terrible as far as what they are. It's just the amounts we're getting and the fact that we can honestly remember back to when we were getting towers where we were getting, heck, I know we had a tower one time where we got Boss Syndrome Orochi for free. We used to get selector tickets, or mystery tickets rather, for some of these fighters, even limited banner fighters. There used to be rubies in some of these back in the day. There have been so many iterations of these towers that have been really, really powerful as far as giving us value. And in general, we are not getting that this time around. What the big selling point here is going to be the angel coins. These are going to be something that you're going to need for the crafting event, which we'll talk about as well. But in general, that isn't enough to save this thing, in my opinion. This time around, they didn't even go ahead and include any of those stones or anything like that. They did go ahead and give us some mystery boxes for stones in here at one point, which I believe is probably on one of the ones I've already cleared. So in general, to be honest with you guys, I'm not a big fan of this tower. I think that this tower honestly has some pretty weak rewards. And in general, if they're going to continue to give us towers, we talked about this in the past when we talked about how much we liked the towers and we wanted more of them. We had talked about the fact that with these things, yeah, they don't have any stones in here, I lied. So yeah, this thing is definitely a mixed bag, but we had talked about in the past about giving us more towers if they were going to do so, that we hoped that they didn't go ahead and neuter the different rewards. Well, lo and behold, guys, they have neutered the rewards. So I think that goes ahead and shows you guys everything there is to see there. But to be honest with you, I've seen far better as far as these things are concerned, and I'm very much so not a big fan of this tower. Like I said, you do technically want to get it done because some of these things are definitely going to be worth having. I'm not saying that they're bad items. It's just the quantities and the ones that they chose, and you do need these for that crafting event that we'll talk about. So you do want to finish it, but I wouldn't say that there's any sort of hurry on it either. So that's the tower this time around, kind of a mixed bag. Like I said, I'm glad that they went ahead and added in that third character, but in general, not a big fan of what I'm seeing there. So that's pretty much going to do it for those two things. Now we can go ahead and move on, since we've already talked about the banners in yesterday's video, and we can talk about some of the other things going on here. So let's go ahead and talk about Angel's gift event. So Angel's gift event is pretty simple. You're going to have these 3 different affinity items here, and you're going to be able to pick these things up through separate means. Now, the way that you're going to be able to pick these up, we'll talk about, but let's talk about the rewards for feeding the affinity items to this bar. So basically, you're going to come in here whenever you get these items, you're going to feed it to this event, and then you're going to be able to get the corresponding rewards depending on what level you're at. The rewards for this thing are honestly pretty darn good. To be honest with you guys, it's almost like what we used to see in some of the old towers with some of this stuff. Sorry, I'm not going to harp on the tower too much, but in general, you're going to get these different items depending on where you're at with this thing. So you're just going to want to make sure that you are collecting these affinity items through the different means. But basically, what kind of is a highlight in here is you're going to notice this guy right here, which is a FES fighter selector. This is going to be for your unified banner FES. And then if we take a look here, there's also going to be a platinum selector here for your cards. Again, this is going to be for your unified cards. And in general, there are some hammers, some capsules, and so on in here, with, of course, some of the bigger things in here being the things that you would need, again, for the crafting event. There's a lot of stuff in here. In general, pretty decent stuff, but honestly, it's just something that's going to keep you busy more than anything. This type of event right here really isn't all that difficult. The main difficulty from it comes from just collecting these different items, but to be honest with you guys, getting these things isn't all that difficult either, because these are actually going to be a part of another event that came along with this update, which is going to be the Ramones Relay Roulette. So this Relay Roulette is interesting. This is a little bit different from roulettes we've seen in the past. So basically, when it comes to this Relay Roulette, you're going to see one of the affinity items that we need for that aforementioned event here. But then if we click this little hourglass down here at the bottom, and you're going to notice that this thing has a meter on it, right? And you're going to increase this meter by basically spinning on this board. But if we take a look here, there are 3 different iterations of this thing. So basically, once you level it up, you will go on to the next one. And the next one is going to have another one of those affinity items, as you'll see here, as well as the same one from the previous one. And then with the final one going to be doubling up and giving you 2 of what I at this point want to just call toilet paper. So when it comes to what we see here, that is what you're going to be getting there as far as the affinity items and how to get them. And you're, of course, again, going to need those for that aforementioned event that we just talked about. So basically, the biggest thing here is you want to go ahead and you want to do your ads for this every day if you're on mobile. And then you want to make sure that you are also doing some of the events for this, because there are event missions. If we go ahead and take a look here, you guys, we go over here to the events, you are going to see that you're going to have a couple of different event missions here that you will need to do in order to pick up more of these. You'll definitely want to do that because, again, you're going to need those affinity items to go ahead and parlay into the gift event. But in general, if you guys are ever wondering how to get these things, you can just go ahead and click on them and it'll tell you exactly where to go. So that is going to be the case as well as if you go into the gift event. If you go into the gift event, you're also going to see right here that that is how you're going to do that. So basically, that is how you guys are going to be able to pick those up. And again, the biggest reason why you're doing this, if you take a look here, is again, you are going to be trying to get these purple on-hell coins, because these on-hell coins are going to be for a separate event that we can go ahead and talk about now. Now, this is going to be the on-hell crafting event. And this is where you're going to be able to pick up the Operation Kitty stones, right? So this is going to be the Star and the Moon stone that was made specifically, basically, at this point for what we got with the EX Volume 2 banner, right? We've seen this type of crafting event in the past. Basically, you're going to need one of these guys, and then you're going to need all these different items. You're going to need those on-hell coins that we've been talking about from some of these different events, and then you can go ahead and parlay that into picking one of these stones up. Now, I do say one of these stones because, to be honest with you guys, picking up both of these stones, if you're free to play, is going to be a bit of a pipe dream, and we'll kind of talk about why here in a moment. But first, let's take a look at what the stones do, right? So let's take a look at the Moonstone first. So the Moonstone is going to be an increase to Operation Kitty Fighter's grab and strike skill damage by 3%. So again, these were clearly made for the current banner characters in mind. So in general, pretty good stuff for On-Hell and Leona. And then if we take a look at the Star Stone here, of course, this one, I'm sure you can already guess, is going to increase your Operation Kitty Fighter's critical rate by 1%. So that is pretty much going to be what we're getting as far as the 2 exclusive stones for the event. Now, insofar as picking both of these up is concerned, if you are a free-to-play player, you're not going to be able to do so free-to-play. I hate to tell you now, but if we go ahead and we take a look here, basically, if we take a look at the secret shop, I'll show you guys real quick, but in the shop here, if you take a look, you can pick up these packages for $50. You can get 60 of these coins in this package. I'm not going to go into the rest of it because that isn't what this is about. I'm trying to make a point here, but $50 will net you 60 of these coins, which basically means if you do the math, you need 120 of these to make a stone. So you need to spend $100 to pick up enough of these to be able to do that. So the reason why that's important to bring up is if you would go in and count the amount of those that you can get for free, as far as those on-hell crafting coins in order to use in this crafting event, you're going to notice that just like the last time free to play, they're only pretty much allowing you to be able to make one of these. So choose wisely. But in general, that's what you got there. I think it's absolutely ludicrous how much money it costs in order to pick up some more of those coins. I mean, that is just ridiculous. And I don't believe, if we go back in here real quick, I don't want to harp on this too long, but I don't believe there's a whole lot of these packages that have those. I think it mainly is just that one. You can pick up the affinity items in some of the separate packages, as well as some more of the roulette tickets. However, I don't think that you can get the actual coins anywhere else. So in general, guys, the only other thing that we need to talk about as far as anything having to do with on-hell here and some of these coins is going to be the Codex, because this is going to be the other place that you can get these. And in general, this is going to be your only other option besides going in and buying some of those packages. So they kind of gave you a choose your own adventure, right? So if you go to the Codex, your only other option besides buying packages is going to be to go in and max out on-hell. So this is kind of a give and a take, I get that, because what they did here is they did go ahead and add this option right here to pick up another one of those stones to put on hell by the end. The thing that I don't necessarily appreciate about this is they did go ahead, if you notice, take away the rubies here. So the compensation that we used to get of 1,000 rubies for maxing out a character, even though it was not a lot, to be honest, especially when you spent the amount it would take to max out a character, it still was very nice to have it there. So now instead you're getting 180 of these coins, which again we've established 120 make one of those stones. So I don't understand why they didn't just go ahead and give you the 120 and then put the rubies or something right here. So basically, guys, you're going to have, we'll come back to this because we're going to talk about the stones, but basically as far as these coins are concerned, you'll have these different events, you'll have that in-shop package, and then the Codex, if you build on hell all the way up to max, you will be able to go in and get that second stone. So that's pretty much it. Just make sure that you're picking whichever stone that you're happy with out of the two if you're not planning on spending money or fully maxing out on hell, and you should be in okay shape. Other things in here as far as the Codex is concerned, while we're here, we'll talk about the stones real quick. First up, the Circle Stone is going to increase your poison damage dealt by an EX fighter by 5%. So not anything too crazy or groundbreaking there. We pretty much figured that this was going to happen when we realized that she had poison, and lo and behold, there you go. So kind of like what we saw with the Burn Stone previously with Kyo, we now have a Poison Stone, which is really nice that it's on the circle, so you don't have to necessarily completely max her out to get it. So next up here, you're going to have your Square Stone. The Square Stone is going to increase your EX fighter's grab skill damage. That's really nice for the grab-based characters, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more of them later on. And then finally, you're going to have your Hexagon Stone. And if we take a look at the Hex Stone, this one's going to increase your active skills damage by, well, a percentage, but active one skill. Keep that in mind. So basically, what it's saying here is it's increasing your EX fighter's active one skill. I'm assuming that that means that it's just increasing your S1. Interesting. I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about that, although it could definitely come down to being something that would be very interesting on specific characters, especially characters that have like giant resets on some of their skills. If we end up getting stones like this that are good on one skill, then that could be pretty interesting to kind of mix and match and play around with. But that is another, kind of like what we saw with this previous banner for EX Volume 1, we saw the lament of these stones that are going to be increasing one particular dot in general for these EX fighters, which was something that was fairly new as far as how this thing worked outside of Awakening and so on. Now we are getting a new type of stone here that is going to be increasing not just all of your active skills, but one active skill, this one being your S1. So interesting stuff. I'm not entirely sure how much I would prefer to have this over some of the old ones. I would have to see what the number max out at. I'm sure it probably maxes out probably around the same place as the circle one, which I believe is around 20 or 25%, although I haven't seen it maxed out, so I would have to see that to know for sure. But either way, it's kind of interesting. I just figured I would kind of point that out. But in general, the Codex this time around, like I said, they changed these items here. I don't necessarily think it's for the better. I think they could have structured this a little bit more wisely for people, but I'm sure it was deliberate, so we can go ahead and move on. So that is going to do it for that guy there. In general, something else that updated here as far as some of these events, this is actually going to be a permanent event that updated, and this is going to be the Tower of Trials update. So for those of us who are upset about the Babyface Tower not having a lot of stuff in there that we were really big fans of, well, we can kind of see where those things went here, right? Because in the Tower of Trials, a lot of the items we would have liked to have seen on that tower are actually going to be here, but they are going to make you earn it, right? So if we go all the way up to level 90, which is where it maxes out at now, you're going to see the recommended CP. Look at that number. Absolutely ridiculous. So as you guys probably saw as I scrolled through here, there are going to be rubies. There's a couple thousand rubies in here from level 60 to level 90 for the update, so that's pretty nice. I've already gone through here and done several of these. Now, the way that this thing basically works, you're going to see right here this little icon. If you click on it, it's going to basically tell you, but basically if you die in one of these fights or you quit, it's going to consume a life, quote unquote. So you're going to have 3 challenges down here, or lives or whatever, and you can basically use up 3 of those and then you're done for the day, and then they reset every day. So basically if you win, it doesn't count towards the challenge count. If you lose or quit out, it does. So that's kind of how that works. The CP requirements are pretty huge. The fights themselves, when you fight the bosses in this thing, can be extremely difficult for some people. It's very much so like Daimo's base, in my opinion, with some of those bosses, with the way that they could basically just, well, for lack of a better term, cheat. They basically would just go in and interrupt you with their finishers and so on and just spam those, and yeah, it makes it very difficult. I get the feeling that this is something that's going to be a long game type thing when it comes to getting through this. This is definitely something they did not intend for everybody to be able to get through overnight. So this is kind of going to be like what we had in the past with the old Immortal dungeons and things like that for some people, where it was something where there were rewards there that they were going to be working towards over a long period of time to eventually get them. And I get the feeling that is going to be the case here. At minimum, we're probably going to have to wait for whatever the next collab is in a few months in order to probably be able to get through this thing real easily for a lot of people, especially for people who are newer. It's just going to be a pipe dream. So my recommendation right now would be to try and get through this as much as you can, but don't really break your, don't break your mouse, your keyboard, your phone, whatever. Don't beat your head against the desk trying to get through it, because honestly, Tower of Trials isn't going anywhere. It's going to be there. It's the CP requirements that are really going to hold you back. So in general, you're just going to have to be patient with it. I'm not probably going to be going too much further in here, honestly, myself. But in general, I think this is more of a long game type thing. And, it's been a while since we've had long game content that we can kind of sit on for a while too. So I don't think it's all bad. I think the rewards in here are really good. I do think it is something that is purposefully difficult. I think that's obvious from the recommended CP, but in general, it's something that eventually you will be able to get through. So pretty much, you guys, that's going to be the different events with this thing. As far as anything else in here, there's a lot of different in-shop packages. There's new battle pass. There were some quality of life changes and so on that we didn't even talk about. Kind of like how they went ahead and gave us the option to play any one of the elemental halls that we want now. So these Hall of Elements are now basically scrollable, and we can kind of go through and pick whichever difficulty and whichever element we want from one day to the next. There were definitely some quality of life changes in here and some changes that were made to certain things. Certain things were condensed and so on and so forth, which is nice because if you go through this guy here for the first time, you're going to be able to get some extra rubies and so on. I'm not going to spend too much time in this video today on all this stuff because honestly, we already talked about it in the update breakdowns the other day, and largely we covered most of that there, so there's really no reason to go over it again. So in general, this time around, some of these events, they're a mixed bag. I'm really not a huge fan at all of what I'm seeing from this tower this time around, outside of adding Leona here as a third option. I'm not a big fan of the rewards there. When it comes to anything else, when it comes to the angel event for the gifts and the crafting, I'm not a huge fan of what they're doing with these stones, if I'm being honest, especially with how expensive it is to buy the packages. It's kind of silly that they're basically telling whales, hey, you know, if you want to go ahead and get this, you have two different options. You can either spend a bunch of money on packages for Angel and get it that way if you max her out, or you can just spend $100 on packages for one stone. So that's kind of a mixed bag there. The Rush Dungeon's great. I really like the exchange shop this time around. The Tower of Trials thing, some people are going to be mad because it's a challenge. I personally think that it's fine to have something that we can't just finish in 10 minutes. If it takes us months to get through it because we need to grind up CP on characters or grind out new characters, that's fine. I don't really care. The rewards will always be there, aren't going anywhere. So, in general, mixed bag. I'm not really feeling all of it, but you guys can let me know in the comment section down below what you think of some of this stuff. We'll cover some of these other things that have happened in here in separate videos because I kind of want to make a discussion point of some of this stuff. So we'll just kind of leave it off here, but you guys can let me know in the comment section what you think of some of these new events. Are you just as kind of underwhelmed by them as I am? Do you think that, honestly, these EX Volume 2 updates are a little lacking as far as quality and substance? But yeah, you guys can let me know. To be honest, I'm kind of done talking about it. So anyway, you guys, I'll talk to you all in the next one. You all take care. Peace.
Continue.